Thanks, Carolyn. I want to go to questions. Shaun, I'm going to give you the last word. You can sum up everything for us. The last word. Not now, the last word.
No, I'll wait.
Questions from the audience. Please stand up. Tell us who you are and what your association is and your question. I have a gentleman right here. I'm sorry, lady right here, please. Go ahead. We have a microphone for you, too, coming.
I'm a 30-year veteran and economic officer in the State Department. I think the comparative advantage that U.S. business has is transparency. I think it's an inexorable wave that will just flow around the world. There will be countries and economic systems that will resist, but it's a competitive advantage that we have. What can the State Department and the Commerce Department do that we are not doing to tell the world and to advocate for you in terms of how Americans do business and why Americans should get the business, because it's not only better for business, it's better for the entire economic enabling environment of host countries.
Thank you. That looks like it was addressed to the business people. Carolyn or Mary Claire, who would like to answer this? You can both answer if you want.
I have a thought, but if you want to I was going to say, I thought it was addressed to State and Commerce, but I'm happy to put in my 2 cents. Just to say that, indeed, there's a lot that we can do on the transparency front. And I think our missions overseas particularly help to amplify what we do when we go into markets and the good practices that we share. And it goes beyond just making money, right? It's training and developing the best-in-class workforce. It's operating in a compliant manner with good ethics and sound compliance systems. It's all those things that we bring that our governments also help to point out that that can be recognized. The ACE State Department Award for the Achievement for Corporate Excellence is one area where I think we do get an opportunity to shout out and name the best in class American companies that are doing business in these markets. Perhaps there's even more that we could do in amplifying that to point out to foreign governments the good things that are happening. And the corporate social responsibility work that the corporate sector does gets applauded all over the world by our missions and consulates. In fact, just a couple days ago in Myanmar, there was a celebration of clean drinking water that P&G happened to be involved in, but the embassy was there in force. So we do get that play, but there's probably more that could be done.
I'm going to take another question. Gentleman over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Magid Said. I work at the Egyptian Embassy, the economic and commercial side. My question is for Ziad, Judy, and Caroline. The missing part in the conversation was engaging the third party of the triangle, which is the economic officer here in DC, for example. And let me clear this part. Your mission is the success of the US companies, which is the same exactly what I'm doing here. If I have a problem with Procter & Gamble, if Chrysler has a problem, if Maersk has a problem, we don't sleep at night because we know the consequences that will be. For example, GM suspended operation for a week. We didn't sleep for a week. So because it will affect us. So we are aligned on the same mission. The issue is how to engage this third party in your effort. And I refer to your example when you said that Mr. Kerry had a letter and he submitted to the Minister of Defense. But let me take it further. Here we know who the Minister of Defense will take this letter and give it to who in the ministry, and who's the guy, my counterpart. And then this guy will be calling me saying, we have this issue in the state. So how could we cut this short and build on bridging commerce, state, foreign officer here to shorten this gap? Because the message is the same. We want your companies successful in our countries.
Thanks. Ziad, do you want to pick up on that?
Excellent point. I couldn't agree more. I don't think it's very structured. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm heading to Egypt next week. I'm meeting with your DCM on Monday. That's trip-driven. It's not business-driven on an ongoing basis. So there's a lot of food for thought there in what you just said. I would say, for example, that one idea that I would have in response to that is that the team within my office, we are organized regionally. A number of the team is here. They have, as part of their mandate that I've asked them to do, is to touch base with business on a monthly basis, the key chambers or industries. And one could imagine that including to their embassy counterparts, which I know they do on an informal basis. But your point's well taken. The more important point, I think what you said also, is the fact that there are things that happen up here at the high levels, but the real work is done by the officers. And Ambassador Pickering, if I could just ask the state CBA team, and Judy, if you want your team just to briefly stand up and just raise a hand.
They should all get up together.
Yeah, because it needs to be acknowledged that you are the ones doing the good work. Yeah, so just,
Thank you.
there you go.
All right, thank you.
So I take your point very much. And if I could just briefly say on the point about transparency, Carolyn, thank you for the flag for the ACE Awards. Secretary Kerry constantly makes this point about how our businesses are our best brand ambassadors overseas. This year's ACE Awards are the awards for corporate excellence that he gives out each year. There are 4 categories, one of which is specifically focused on transparency by U.S. companies in the way they do business. The way the process works is that companies, the posts nominate the companies. And so I would just say that if you know, or if others in the room are engaging in a way that they would want their work to be recognized, I hope you'll consider reaching out to posts to highlight those examples, because we have a vested interest in doing it at a company level. We also obviously try to infuse those same standards into the negotiations that we're doing on BIT and trade agreements. So that's the other way in which I think it feeds in.
I'm going to take one more question, then we're going to hear from Shaun. Back here, please, sir.
Thanks very much. Actually, I have a question for you, Ambassador Pickering, and possibly for Shaun.
Tell me who you are first.
Oh, sorry, I'm Ted Alden from the Council on Foreign Relations.
We'll answer. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. Ted Alden with the Council on Foreign Relations. You mentioned at the outset the political environment on trade, which we all know is not terribly good these days. What would your advice be for U.S. businesses as to how they ought to engage? Should they be keeping their heads low, ducking down, hope all this blows over? Should they be more engaged in speaking out publicly? And if so, what should they be saying to the American public about trade and its role in the economy?
But I think, I didn't come here to answer questions, but I think very specifically, business and politics will respond to specific examples of success. We've heard a number of them. Somewhere we need data that can be a little harder than we have now. It begins to show clearly how our involvement in business overseas, both in manufacturing and selling, tends to produce a nexus of effort that is rewarded by greater capacity overseas, and that reflects more jobs at home. And somehow this chain, better representation and support, better business success, better job creation. It's obviously true that to some extent trade is a shared enterprise. We cannot expect trade to be 100% in our favor. It's always been a two-way street. And the really interesting thing is it's win-win on both sides. Trade is not a zero-sum beggar your neighbor proposition if we're handling it the right way, and I think we have been. And so my view is we need to get that message across to the politicians who now are protectionist-oriented and who would like to create what I think is a dying artifact of manufacturing and perhaps service-oriented activities, because we're protecting ourselves from the outside. We're protecting ourselves from the kind of competition that drives us ahead. And one of you said, I think beautifully here today, if competition can be continued to be the root of our success, and we stay out ahead of what we have in the competitive world, and that's the success of our business, and that's where we're strongest, then we're playing to core strengths, rather than hiding ourselves behind a wall somewhere, reducing the amount of activity we do overseas, and expecting our domestic market to provide all the growth, all the change, all the innovation, and all the opportunity. I will say nothing more. Look, we have no right to hold you any longer than we have. You've come, and I think come in numbers. We're very grateful for that. Shaun, just give us your wrap.
Well, Judy, did you have one thing you wanted to say?
Actually, why don't we wrap up, and that way we can socialize.
circulate.
Well, okay, no, that's fine. Yeah. Look, I think Chuck Ford and I feel really very gratified by the response we've gotten from the State Department, the Commerce Department, the engagement we've had formally and informally. I think all of us in the Academy really feel that this is been a very successful venture, and we feel that we're going to continue to have an impact. The 3 or 4 things that I think are key to remember going forward: how much the world has changed. Business community tells us they're getting good support from U.S. embassies overseas, but the world has changed. The technology, the issues that are emerging are different, and the need to keep our people trained and up to speed is just gotten there. I think when I joined the State Department in 1972, very frankly, commercial diplomacy, commercial work was not always a priority. We were fighting to win the Cold War, and that's the reason, frankly, that the commercial work was taken out of the State Department and the lead role given to the Commerce Department, because the State Department didn't always see it. Now, we had a lot of other priorities, but what we heard in our survey, with my experience more broadly, is that embassies get it, ambassadors get it, but it's just the challenge of continuing to get it and succeed is going to be one. The role of the ambassador is critical. I mean, you've got these in large embassies where Ambassador Pickering served. He talked about spending 25% of his time on commercial things. It isn't just state and commerce. You've got agricultural attachés, security people, public diplomacy, the military, all have to be involved. And it's really that personal role of the ambassador, be he or she a career officer out of one of the departments or a political non-career appointee. That is really very critical. So I think we feel good that this report, we've been given this opportunity to help give a little extra impetus to something that the agencies are already doing. So hopefully it sparks an ongoing process and we can stay involved. You'll be reaching out to the business community because this is not a static process. It's going to continue to evolve. And I think the priority we're seeing from Commerce and State, the interest from the business community, caused me to be quite optimistic.
Thank you. Thank you all for staying with us for a little bit of extra overtime. I hope you'll have an opportunity to meet and talk with the panel members and the others instrumental in the report. Thank you for joining us. My deep thanks particularly to Chuck and Shaun for their lead in putting together the report and everybody else who worked on it. And it's, in my view, another extremely good example of how we on the outside can work with business and I hope labor and with all of the others and our friends in the government further to cement this idea that transparency, joint work together, common understanding, and communications can build success for all of us. Thank you very much.